It's clear from that photograph that while there is considerable damage in the photograph I showed in a particular section of the ship, the remainder of the ship appears to be relatively undamaged. So, I mean, I think there will definitely be deaths on board, but I think to say it's in the hundreds, I think that would be unusual.
You think it's safe to say that it would be in the hundreds?
No, I said if you said in the hundreds, I would find that unusual, given that the ship was still afloat considerably long after the attack and that it appears to be relatively undamaged elsewhere in the ship. Again, this is all speculation.
It is, John, and unfortunately, we've had to speculate because the Russians want this to go away. But it's obviously a great sense of national pride and a huge black eye to the Russian Navy to lose that ship, because I think in historical terms, whatever Navy you're from, to lose your flagship in a conflict is quite remarkable, is it not? I mean, this, I've covered the Kursk, which was the Russian loss of a submarine. But I mean, this is quite recent and a very large loss to the Russian Navy.
Yes, I mean, you've mentioned the Kursk, and I was going to talk about Kursk because she is significant in the other possible cause of the loss of Moskva. Russia has, or the Soviet Union and Russia, depending on either side of the change of name and status, has had a number of losses of ships and submarines over the decades. The latest significant one was Kursk. Kursk was an entirely self-generated system failure, followed by explosion, followed by loss of all hands and the submarine. They previously, in the mid-1980s, lost a Mike-class submarine off the coast of Norway, which caught fire with very few survivors and sank. So problems with their systems and the manpower mixed between professional and conscripts that man it have dogged the Russian and the Soviet Navy for decades. So that is why I can't exclude, I wouldn't exclude that this was, this could have been an internal accident of a very significant kind. But I think the evidence in the photographs tends to lean far more. And as the US intelligence backs up, perhaps there is other information that's not in the public domain. But I think just an analysis of the photographs shows that if I had to choose, I would say this was as a result of an attack. But we shouldn't rule out the Russian explanation, because it's not as if it would be the first time they'd lost a major ship or submarine through accident.
Look, I know you have a huge amount of expertise in chemical, biological, nuclear, and I just can't let you go without asking you, do you think that this danger of some of the threats from President Putin has eased somewhat? I mean, he hinted at a possible use of a nuclear tactical weapon, and there are great fears of them using chemical weapons as they did in Syria. Do you have reason to, exhale and feel that we're through a more dangerous period now with the Russians, or do you think that that threat is still there, looming, and something we have to really take note of?
I don't exhale with any relief at any stage of this war. As I think I said to you in an earlier interview when we discussed this, the veiled threats, very thinly veiled threats that the president made and some of his senior staff, military and political, made which were couched in terms that made it absolutely clear that if there was intervention by a neighboring state or indeed by NATO, that nuclear weapons were definitely within the field of arms on the table. On the one hand, you could say that intervention has not occurred for a whole host of reasons, mostly because intervention the one thing you can say about any intervention is that the life of the average Ukrainian would become much more dangerous instantly. Even more so than under the callous bombardment of the Russians. And NATO and the US in particular took very great care not to rise to any of the nuclear saber rattling that President Putin undertook at the beginning. And I said in that interview with you that him using a weapon as part of his war against Ukraine, a nuclear weapon, is extremely unlikely. I would never venture to say President Putin would not do ... because every time you try and say that, he then goes and does it. But I think it would be extremely unlikely, because if you wanted to guarantee an intervention, that would be the way to go about it. So whilst I don't exhale with relief, and I don't think anything has changed as a result of the change in strategy in Moscow, where they have moved from trying to take the capital to possibly the original most significant strategic thing for Russia, and that is a land bridge to the illegally annexed Crimea part of Ukraine. I don't think that removes the minimal possibility of these weapons. What I don't think has changed at all, however, is if things are not going the way that the president and the leading apparatchiks in Moscow want it to go, and in particular, if resilience continues to be shown by everyone from President Zelensky down to the civilians whose stoic reaction to the murder of their families we see daily on television, I remain afraid that the predilection of the Russians and President Putin in particular in person to resort to barbaric weapons, chemical weapons and biological weapons in the terrorization of the civilian community, I could not rule that out. I don't think that has changed. And I think the way in which you counter that is to make it absolutely clear, as I've said before, that if those weapons are used, in addition to the countless breaches of international humanitarian law that have already taken place in the Ukraine war, you would assiduously seek out, try and bring to justice all of those in the command chain who were part of the release of those weapons of terror.
John Gower, Rear Admiral, retired from the British Navy. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you.